I think I was considered an overly sensitive child, and it was a combination of feeling other people's feelings. At night, I saw faces in the dark, and I saw energy around people. I write in my book that my father was a physicist, and I said to him that I could see molecules, and he took me to an electron microscope to show me molecules, and I knew I wasn't seeing molecules, and then I got scared that something was wrong with me. And I was seeing energy, auras, and beings in the etheric form. And so I slept with my light on because I felt afraid. And I think it's unfortunate that in our culture, all too often, the concept of etheric beings is the boogeyman rather than the angelic teacher or support. And so I just didn't have a frame of reference in which to understand what was happening to me. And I also had some out-of-body experiences where I would feel the spinning, and then I would have my spirit leave my body. And, it was all very confusing because I didn't have anyone around me who could explain what I was experiencing. And yet, in my natural philosophical nature, I wanted to understand the meaning of life. And it was very hard for me to just think about a career and a life without a deeper understanding, because I grew up with a mother who had a severe case of MS, and I wanted to understand, why is one person sick and one person healthy and one person rich and one person poor? It seemed to me that in nature there was profound order, and that there must be order to our lives as well, because we're part of nature. But I didn't know. I really was struggling. And so my watershed event was when I was 19, my mother came back and talked to me after she died. And that's when everything changed. And I say in my book, my mother gave me birth and my mother gave me rebirth, because after that experience, I started to see and remember that we're all spirit temporarily on the earth.
Okay, so the TAD technique is a technique that developed over time, which is the comparison of perception from the gut with the perception of the third eye. And so the TAD technique is the comparison of these two forms of perception in order to learn the value of the third eye. I can teach the technique with eyes closed. It's one way, and I can also teach it with eyes open. When our auras shrink, we become psychic sponges. We start absorbing the feelings of others, and we influence our environment because we're all energy, and every thought and feeling we have spews out into the environment. When we cultivate positivity, the aura expands. We stop being overly affected by our environment, and we start becoming a positive influence. Well, the third eye really helps because, if you're in the solar plexus and you're feeling negative and you're trying to feel positive, it may just not work. But when you shift to the third eye, again, perception informs feeling. So as your perception changes, the process of moving into positivity isn't so difficult. So the third eye is a great aid in sustaining positivity. The other thing is the process of being vigilant and being self-observing and training the mind and not letting the mind run our lives, but us training the mind and using it as a tool. Well, inspiration, think of it as in spirit. Inspiration is another really powerful tool. It's a tool that opens the crown chakra. So when we're inspired, we are uplifted, we are wowed, and my guides say that inspiration is the back door to trust. That when we're inspired, it's impossible to be anxious. It's impossible to be afraid. It cancels out the fear. So that inspiration, I find, is the way that the most number of people can feel spiritual connection, whether they believe in spirit or not. If someone is inspired, then they have this feeling of oneness, whether they believe in oneness or not. So it's a magnificent tool for everyone. Follow what inspires you, but also the more we develop the third eye, the more simple things that we didn't think would inspire us do. I give the example of a plate of food, that when we experience deeply all the hands and all the effort that brought the food to us, we can be inspired, or we can just eat it unconsciously, not realizing what's before us. Well, the third eye is the center of spiritual perception. And attunement is blending our conscious mind with our spirit. So when we perceive from the spiritual view, then the process of decision making, which the third eye is the key to good decision making, becomes natural. So I also want to encourage people that when you use deep listening, when you connect with your spirit, when you use your third eye, you don't conform, and you also don't rebel. You have this deeper attunement to what's right for you. And so I have a lot of unusual stories in my life of how things have unfolded in the process of not conforming to society, but rather letting spirit be my guide. So my guides emphasize acceptance of what is, look at what is, don't avoid, and then ask, given what is, what am I to do? And then the decision is made through deep listening and deep focus. Well, I'm actually working with a woman who's taking my Wisdom of the Chakras book and the basic concepts there into elementary schools. So we call it a framework for wise education, because I see the chakras as a framework for human development. And so I guess I would say, my Wisdom of the Chakras book, because it's about helping children stay inspired, helping children to learn the power of focus and concentration, helping children recognize that their behavior is not their identity. Their identity is deeper, and their behavior is the stage of development. And also, in the heart chakra, to not encourage competition, but cooperation. And also to help heal emotional turmoil by strengthening focus and concentration skills and encouraging the parent to say, who is my child? Not how can I direct them the way society says, but if they're a spirit temporarily on the earth, why have they come here? What are they here to learn? What are they here to contribute? I'm a parent, and my kids were young. The fundamental question of which disciplines and skills do you help them acquire? By meditating and using the third eye to really understand who your child is, it helps you to see, whether you encourage a child to learn a certain language or whether you encourage them to learn a certain instrument. And so it's this process of deep listening. And I was taught to listen through meditation to the spirit of my children. They have skills because that's part of how they identify. And this focus and concentration is, it's amazing. We have wonderful stories in the elementary school that we're bringing this material to, where kids just become so incredibly wise. And what he learned was it had to do with how he was focused, and that impacted how he perceived, and that impacted how he felt. Large numbers of people understand the power of the third eye because we are a classic solar plexus culture, and it's causing all kinds of problems. Well, I think it's when I'm actualizing my spirit. And sometimes that happens when I'm teaching, and sometimes it happens when I'm alone, and sometimes it happens with my husband. It's this feeling of interconnection. It's a feeling of wholeness. It's a feeling of I know who I am, and I don't feel vulnerable to what's going on around me because I feel this inner core strength. My website is simply ellentadd.com, and my name is spelled with 2 D's, Tadd. I think it's important to recognize that we're alive in a challenging time. We're alive in a challenging time because our world is stressed environmentally. A lot of decisions have been made that expose us to toxicity, and we have, a variety of problems that are important not to ignore. And so to me, positivity doesn't mean ignoring our problems. Positivity is recognizing that in the midst of our human challenges, we are spirit, and accessing the spiritual principles and the wisdom that comes from them are what we most need to do in order to navigate. And I think that this is a time where people are going to be searching for deeper answers, and this is the beauty, is that it will bring people more to a spiritual perspective. So I define meditation as the ability to still the brain chatter. And this is a discipline, like learning to read. And the 3 approaches I take in order to achieve this starts with inspiration. So the crown chakra in the chakra system, which is at the top of the head, is the bridge from the material to the spiritual dimension. And it's through this crown chakra that we're able to access the spiritual realm and have direct revelation. In religious pictures, it's the golden halo. And what opens the crown chakra is trust, devotion, and inspiration. And I find that inspiration is the easiest way to open the crown chakra. So before you meditate, if you want to have direct spiritual connection, you must open the crown chakra. It's the door to spirit. Depression, my guides say, is a closed crown chakra. It's depressed in the aura, and when the crown is open, it's expanded. So before you start to meditate, focus on what inspires you. It's different for different people, so you have to make your own little list. It may be a memory, it may be a concept, it may be a person. It's amazing that, I can think about a time I was at the ocean, decades ago, and it still inspires me. So focus on what inspires. Once you feel this open, airy feeling at the top of the head, then you're ready to begin. The next step is affirmation, a positive affirmative statement. And the purpose of this is a couple-fold. One, to create a positive environment. And 2, to focus on one phrase as training wheels to get to know thought. So the process of staying with one thought. So often when I teach meditation, I have people start with, I am spirit, I am infinite spirit. I am spirit, I am infinite spirit. To create positivity, to remind us, and to practice saying one thought. Then the next step is to let go of the thought. And when you're learning, it can feel like a rocking sensation. I am spirit, infinite spirit, pause. I am spirit, infinite spirit, pause. You want to elongate your pauses as you can. Some people have trouble and they just have to practice saying one thought without interruption. And gradually the pauses become part of the process. But what's important is to not be what I call a sloppy meditator. Because if you're having a lot of brain chatter, you're not going to get the depth of direct spiritual connection. And some people think meditation is having thoughts and letting them go. Well, that's okay, but I'm more rigorous when it comes to meditation training, where I really want people to get to the point where they sit with no thoughts, because that's when the really remarkable experiences start to happen. That's when this real positive force is experienced, and you start having connection with the spirit within, the spirit without, guides and vision, and all kinds of wonderful things happen. But meditation is a prerequisite in most cases. It varies from person to person. I often have my students meditate deeply for short periods of time because I want people to get insight, to have experiences, and then get on with integration. So I'm not a big proponent of meditating for long periods because we're here to learn to bring the spiritual qualities into our human life versus stepping away from our human life. So I think that question varies. It can be 15 minutes, it can be 20 minutes, it depends on the person. But the most important thing is to create the discipline, to create the habit. So when I first started, I meditated at a certain time in a certain place every day so I could build the skill. Now I can just not think when I want to not think. So I have the skill. So I can use it as a skill throughout the day when I need to attune. Thank you so much